I think it was Aristotle who first noted that every human being, no matter what race, no matter what background or religion, etc., every human being has something in common. And this common thing is that everyone ultimately desires happiness, right? And that is the fundamental motivation for everything we do, everything we say in our lives. For example, I go to university, and a lot of you guys go to university as well. Why? Because you want to learn things, you want to be successful, you want to have a career, and all because you want to make yourself happier, right? And it's for everything else we do as well. Why we eat that chocolate biscuit, or we want to go on a diet, or buy a dog, or get married, anything is ultimately for the sake of some kind of greater happiness, right? So everyone agree? Yeah? Okay, cool. I'll hold that thought. And let's backtrack around 14 billion years. We backtrack 14 billion years, and assuming that right at the beginning, hi guys. So right in the beginning, there was a creator, a God, let's say. And I'm assuming and I'm hoping that there is a God. If there's not, then the whole content of my talk will break down. But okay, so assuming that there's a God, do you think that God wants to be happy? Yeah? Josh, do you think God wants to be happy? Yeah, of course. I mean, what else would he want to be, right? Okay, so like you and me, God wants to be happy, okay? So that must be the fundamental motivation of why God would do anything, right? Why God would create in the first place. So, starting off our story, we have God, our creator, and we have the creation, or human beings. Okay, so God created the creation in order to make him happy, right? But if he just kind of left the creation by itself and he did nothing with it, then it wouldn't really make him happy, it wouldn't really have any effect. So in order for this creation to make God happy, there must be some kind of relationship here, right? Does everyone agree? They must have some kind of relationship. So God wants to have a relationship with his creation, with human beings, okay? So if God wants to experience happiness, he wants to experience the greatest kind of happiness that you can ever experience. And therefore, he wants to receive that from the highest kind of relationship we can attain here. So let's look into that for a minute. Do we have any psychologists here? Anyone studying psychology? No? Okay, don't worry. Hi, Jonathan, come in. Okay, well, if you ask any psychologist, what do you think is the most influential kind of relationship in human life? What do you think they would say? What kind of relationship is the most influential or in your life? Anyone has to guess? Yes?
Your relationship with your parents?
Yeah, a relationship with parents, right? For me too. I think the relationship with my parents is the most influential. And you can ask any psychologist, they'll probably say the same thing, right? So the parent-child relationship has the most impact in your life. And we can say that arguably it's the most powerful and it's the strongest relationship, right? So, yeah. You can agree that there's no force in the universe that could break the bond between a parent and child, right? And we have relationships between our friends and our colleagues and our siblings, but those relationships, they change over time and they come and go. And even relationship with like your partner or like husband and wife, although that can be a really strong relationship, it's a sad thing to say, but ultimately, if you lose the love of your life, they're not irreplaceable in a way. But the parent-child relationship, I can never replace my mom. She will always be my mom, right? My dad will always be my dad. That bond is unchanging and nothing can break it. So we can say that the parent-child relationship is the strongest, the most powerful relationship you can have. So therefore, it has the potential to bring the greatest joy. So if God wants to experience the greatest joy through this relationship, he wants to have this parent-child relationship with us, human beings. Okay, so let's explore this parent-child relationship for a bit. What is here? What is right at the center of this parent-child relationship? Well, we say that a bond between a mother and a child is a bond of, anyone? Trust? Yeah, there's trust. Even deeper than that, the bond between a mother and child, a bond of, sorry? Blood? Yes? Yeah? What does a mother give to her child? Love, right? Everyone agree? Love is like at the center of this. a thing a parent will continuously keep giving to their child is love, right? So if this is at the center of this relationship, let's look at love for a second. You know, love is selfless, love is caring, love is kind, but I'm just looking for one little aspect of love today. It's a little tricky thing. If I said, Jungsun, tell me you love me or else I'm gonna slap you. Would you love me? No, you wouldn't, right? Even if she said, I love you, Amy, would I feel loved if I forced her? No, I'm not gonna feel loved, right? Because the whole point of love is that it cannot be forced, but actually it has to be freely given. Everyone agree with that? Yeah? So actually love, it requires this little thing called freedom. Love requires freedom. So let's look at freedom for a second. Freedom is all about having the choice, right? And it's all about making a decision yourself. And that decision, the whole point of making a decision is for the outcome, for the result of that decision, okay? And the result of your decision will only have any significance if you can take responsibility for that outcome. That make sense? So, by taking responsibility for the outcome of our decisions, then we are exercising our own freedom. For example, I chose to study physics at university out of my own free will. And I took responsibility for that decision. So I'm studying, I'm learning, and I'm achieving something through that freedom I used to decide to study physics. Yeah? So actually, freedom requires something called responsibility. And actually, this is all a package deal. You cannot have love without freedom, and you cannot have freedom without responsibility. So you need all of these together. So if we take a look at responsibility. So let's zoom into responsibility a second. We're going even deeper and deeper. So you've heard the quote that with great power comes great responsibility, right? Where's that quote from? Spider-Man, yeah, I love Spider-Man. But have you ever considered that with great responsibility comes great power? We're going to look at that for a sec. Let's take a very successful, very powerful guy. Person off the top of my head was Mark Zuckerberg. Do you know who Mark Zuckerberg is? Yeah, what is he responsible for? Facebook. Mark Zuckerberg is responsible for Facebook, okay? And he's not only responsible for the Facebook, but he's the creator of Facebook, okay? So he is responsible for the creation of Facebook. So under his responsibility comes creativity, okay? He's not only responsible for the creation of Facebook, he's responsible for the whole company of Facebook, right? Because he's responsible for creation, he's responsible for the company. He has this right of ownership, the right of ownership of the company, doesn't he? No one can take away that right of ownership. He's the owner, he's the big boss. And also, Facebook is a huge success, right? It's a big hit globally. Like everyone has Facebook nowadays. If you don't have Facebook, you're seen as kind of weird. You know, no offense if no one has Facebook here. I don't think you're weird, actually. I highly respect you. Yeah, because it's so successful, Mark Zuckerberg is responsible for the success of Facebook. Therefore, he has made a huge achievement, right? Achievement, is that how I spell achievement? I haven't either. Anyway, he has a huge achievement because he took responsibility. And one more thing, throughout this process of creating Facebook, he created it, he set up this business, and yeah, his business grew and grew. Mark Zuckerberg became a very highly esteemed, highly successful, and highly skilled businessman. And I can imagine that through this process, it probably did a lot of good for his kind of personal development, his developing his skills, his personal growth as a businessman, right? So through taking responsibility, he could go through personal growth and personal development. So you can see that under responsibility, because we have responsibility, we are allowed all of these. We are allowed creativity, right of ownership, we can achieve things, and we can grow ourselves. And the beauty of this is that no one can take this away from you. Not even God can take away your responsibility. Think for a second, if God one day said, Amy, I take responsibility for your whole life. I take responsibility for your actions, your thoughts, your deeds, your words, everything. If God did that, God would be taking away my creativity. He will be taking away my right of ownership of anything. He'll be taking away any achievement I ever made. He'll be taking away my ability to grow myself. If God took away my responsibility, God will be taking away my freedom. If God takes away my freedom, God takes away my ability to love. If God takes away my ability to love, then this relationship breaks down, right? So it's not a question of free will, but actually God, He requires us to have and to take responsibility for our actions and for our thoughts. Therefore, God is only in control of part of this, and part of this we are in control of, right? And actually, when it comes down to our portion of responsibility, God is quite helpless. If God were to interfere with our responsibility, He would be defeating His whole purpose of creating in the first place. So I want to tell you a little bit of a story about me and my dad. My dad, he's a really good guy. I respect him a lot. When I was in my early teens, certain actions and his decisions, I couldn't really understand them. And because I couldn't take time to understand him, I sort of distanced myself from him, and I just stopped trying in the relationship. And that was sort of blocking me from having a relationship with my dad. And that kind of hurt me in a sense. Like, I became almost resentful towards him because of that. And that didn't really get restored. Anyway, a few years later, kind of recently, I went abroad and I was by myself, and I was there for a few weeks, and something a bit difficult happened between me and the people around me at the time. So I felt very disconnected from the people there, and I felt so utterly alone. And I felt like I was really losing my ground. My self-esteem was plummeting, and basically I was having a mini breakdown. And I just really wanted to call my parents. So I called up my dad. And because it's very difficult for me to talk to my dad because of this block I put up, the only thing I could force myself to say at that time was, "Dad, this is difficult." My dad, he replied, he didn't lecture me, he didn't question me or anything, but instead he just said, "Amy, we're really proud of you. You're doing really well, keep going. And we're going to celebrate when you get home, okay?" And I was so touched by that. I was so moved. And that was all it took for me to get over my breakdown, you know. I found my ground again because I felt like, yes, I am my parents' daughter, and I'm loved and valued. And I was so touched because of that. And I felt like I was kind of restoring something, because before I was sort of hurtful because I didn't have this relationship that I wanted with my dad. And I didn't take my responsibility as a daughter. And actually, I blamed my dad for that. But when I took the first step back, then he embraced me fully. So when we don't do our own part, we hurt and we say, "This is unfair," and I'm hurting, and we blame the other person, right? We blame other people when we fail to take our own responsibility. And we blame God so often for our pain, for our hurt, but actually we don't realize that God is probably hurting too. Have you ever witnessed that scene where you get this new mother and you get her little kid, and the little toddler's running around, and then boom, the toddler falls over. And then the mother comes running faster than Usain Bolt just to pick up her kid, and everything's so dramatic, and the kid is crying, the mom's like, "Oh, honey, are you okay?" And then 5 minutes later, the kid is fine, he's up and running again. But actually the mother is left traumatized, thinking, "Oh, when's he gonna fall over again?" You see, that whole experience, even though the kid was hurt when he fell over, actually it probably scared the mother even more. And just like when I stopped trying with the relationship with my dad, it hurt me because I blocked myself from having this relationship I wanted to. And I blamed him for that, and I thought I was the only one hurting in that relationship. But actually, it was probably him hurting more. If you think about a parent and his daughter can't even receive what he wants to give, that was probably even more painful than what I was going through. And actually, something we don't recognize enough is how much suffering I put God through. How helpless he feels when I mess up, when I get hurt, and how hurt he feels when I cannot receive the love he wants to give me. Has anyone been in this situation where you really, really love someone, but they just don't want to love you back, or they cannot receive your love? Has anyone been in that situation, right? How does it feel? Michael, how does it feel?
Frustrating.
Frustrating. It hurts, right? It's so painful. Actually, I think that's one of the most painful things you can go through, is to really love someone who cannot love you back or cannot receive your love. How often do we put God in that situation? How often is God left in that position? So we turn our back on God first. And we're the ones who go to war with God because we suffer, because it's unfair, because we're in pain. We blame God. Actually, did God abandon us first? It was human beings, right? We turn our back on God first. And you turn your back on him. Can he do anything for you if you're not facing the same way? He can't do anything for you, right? So therefore, it's man's responsibility to take that first step back to God. It's man's responsibility to turn around and say, God, I want to restore this relationship. God is not at war with us, right? God wants to love you and he wants to give to you. But I'm the one who declared war with God. So only I'm the one who can wave the white flag. Only I'm the one who can begin the step to restoring this relationship here. Okay, I want to do a quick activity with you guys. So everyone has a pen and paper on their table. Would you like to grab a pen and paper, please? With your friend this morning, or something small, something that hurt you, a situation within a relationship. And try and think of that. Has everyone got it? Just in your head? Yes. So first, I want you to write down, how was I seeking to blame the other person in this situation? How was I seeking to blame the other person? So for example, I was seeking to blame my dad because I thought he didn't talk to me so much. But actually, I made it clear that I didn't want to talk to him. So how are you seeking to blame the other person in this situation? And you can write that down. I'll give you a few more seconds. Okay, next question is, what should I have taken responsibility for? For example, I should have taken responsibility I should have taken my responsibility as a daughter to speak to my dad first. So what should I have taken responsibility for in this situation? Everyone done? Okay, next question. How did seeking to blame affect you? How did it affect you? So for me, it made me feel bitter. I had lack of any substantial relationship. So what effect does it have on you? What does it make you feel? And next is, what effect did it have on the other person? So for me, maybe my dad felt like I didn't want to have a relationship with him. That's probably the effect it had on the other person. So put yourself in the other person's shoes. What effect does it have on them? And finally, what effect does this have on your relationship? Is there lack of communication, lack of trust? Does it break down your relationship? And next one, just a yes or no question. Was it worth it? Was it worth blaming the other person rather than seeking to take responsibility? Okay, and the final point is, how will you take responsibility from here on in this relationship? How will you take responsibility and improve this relationship? You can write some little action steps, action points, some things you can start this week. All right, is everyone done? Maybe. Yes? Okay, and one last challenge. I am going to ask you guys to partner up and share what you've written down. When you say these things out loud, when you say, especially your action steps, then it's like the first step to substantializing those. Just write it down on a piece of paper, that piece of paper is going to get us. But if you share it with someone, then you can really start to substantialize it. So you can partner up, try and be with someone maybe you don't know. And you don't have to give names, you don't have to give details, you don't want to. But you can start with one person, share for 3 minutes, and then swap another 3 minutes. Okay?